We look to the book of Exodus, the 17th chapter, verses 1 through 7. We are reading about how the children of Israel and Moses are going to resolve their water problem. The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin, traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So they quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses replied, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test?" But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord, "What am I to do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." The Lord answered Moses, "Walk on ahead of the people. Take with you some of the elders of Israel and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink." So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. And he called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" The children of Israel definitely had a water problem. The wilderness of Sin, that region of the Arabian Peninsula, might have anywhere from 2 to 10 inches of annual rainfall per year. We are going to look at some illustrations to go with this Exodus chapter 17. We'll bring these up. And indeed, the children of Israel are turning to Moses and saying, "We have no water, we are thirsty." And in spirit of some of the humor we shared last week in the sister sermon, somebody in the group, "Are we there yet?" So again, with the water problem, again, Moses strikes the rock as God asked, and indeed water was found. It says the people quarreled with Moses, and so again, in the spirit of some of that contention, somebody raised the question, does it have fluoride, etc., and so forth. Of course, Moses' main job is to lead the people, and God helps, and water is provided. We give credit again to Pastor James McDonald, who wrote the book and did the video series, "Lord, It Changed My Attitude." This time he's talking about a criticism. This was very much in the quarreling that the children of Israel were doing against Moses. But again, for this purpose today, criticism is dwelling upon the perceived faults of another with no view to their good. The first thing to emphasize is perceived faults. Can I see another human being as God sees another human being? As humans, oftentimes we may perceive faults in each other, and these may or may not be accurate. It is important to remember, how does God see my brother or sister? Also, the second part of the definition is to be talking about another person with no view to their good. We're assuming the situation cannot be improved. We cannot talk to them about it. We cannot pray about it. We're basically just focusing on a fault. And that's all that we're trying to accomplish is talk about something else with the critical attitude. Example A. This might be close to the hearts and minds of some folks we know. So the red N is there for a reason. Let's say there's a group of people. Football has been canceled. We want a football season. We file an appeal. We base it on new procedures based on facts. This is not criticism. This is filing an appeal. And the goal here is to improve things. And in the appeal, I'm sure they did not write anything such as Administrator Jones or Administrator Smith, they're not competent, they're not capable. It didn't spend time perceiving faults in another person. Instead, the appeal was based on procedure and facts. And so the view was to improve the situation. For one thing, the safety plan needed improving. That was done, it was improved, and something was accomplished. Also, I want to be clear that these graphics, they're in common domain. They're not in the copyright or the trademark column of illustrations. Another example, example B. Let us say we are at an event where people walk around selling things such as pizza by the slice. So we're hungry, we see the pizza vendor, and after we've already bought a slice of pizza, then we see the runza vendor and realize, oh, I really wanted runza instead. So do I yell at the pizza vendor for selling me pizza? Am I perceiving they have some kind of personal fault? Am I not thinking or talking with a view to their good? So I could be in the area of criticism. It is certainly not the fault of the pizza vendor when and where I wanted to buy my pizza. And of course, no one's situation has been improved if I go on, grumbling or quarreling like the Israelites. I'm more in the area of criticism. So again, it's not been with the view to someone's good. Again, we have that runza illustration held over from last week. Now this week, our life application goes in a little bit different direction. Moses was not perfect. He did not like public speaking. Moses struck down the overseer back in Egypt. Knowing this, God still chose Moses. This quarreling against Moses, it falls in the criticism department, which means there's a risk of quarreling with God, more so than Moses. Moses is the servant. God is the source. So Pastor McDonald, his recommendation to come away from wilderness attitudes is to replace a critical attitude with an attitude of gratitude, to be approaching life with a thankfulness for what God does give, for the good, the improvement that we can see in one another. And so with further application, we repeat, Moses was not perfect. He was shy. He had a temper. God had a view to Moses' good. So God made covenant, not criticism with Moses. God said, I want to work with you. This brings us also to the speck and log problem. Jesus taught upon this in Matthew 7, verse 3. He mentions how people are eager to take the speck out of our neighbor's eye while ignoring the log in our own eye. This is Jesus teaching about the focus on the personal faults of others without view to their improvement, of course, not coming to grips with what are my shortcomings? How might I improve? How do I take the log out of my eye? And so this brings us to a very beneficial teaching point. When things are happening in life, if we're in wilderness periods, times of hardship, we can choose to be bitter, or we can choose to be better. We can make a decision. We can also make covenant. We can have a view to God's good, to the good of others, the good of ourselves. One other thing that I want to share is as Moses was rescued from the Nile, and he also rescued the people from the Red Sea, and then he rescues them from the water shortage. We also see how Jesus in the waters of baptism brought a new meaning to water as a spiritual symbol of life. And we know that out of the baptism that Jesus had from John the Baptist, that then he gave to us for quenching our spiritual thirst, we give thanks for what God has done for us. We practice our attitude of gratitude. Because Jesus also, he went to the rock, whereas Moses brought water out of the rock in the wilderness so the people might have physical water. Jesus brought life out of death from the rock of the tomb. Out of that rock, Jesus came out on that first Easter and gave us the gift of resurrection, and he gave us the gift of grace and forgiveness. So Jesus had a view to our good, to our improvement. And so it is. Moses brought water from the rock. Jesus brings life from the rock of the tomb and invites us indeed to respond to Christ and to respond to life, not with attitudes